Pre-lecture on Rabbinic Judaism. This will get you started and in a position to do the reading for your class on Rabbinic Judaism that we're going to start next week. So, getting started, here's what you need to know about Rabbinic Judaism. Two things at the outset. Two things at the outset. The first one is this. Most Judaism in the world today is Rabbinic Judaism. When people talk about Judaism or Jews today, what they mean is Rabbinic Judaism. There are only very, very small traces of non-Rabbinic Judaism that are left in the world. So Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox Jews, conservative and Reform Jews, Jews of pretty much all stripes in Israel and in the US and throughout the world are Jews of the Rabbinic persuasion. And so that's the first thing that you need to know. The second is this. It is often thought that Christianity grew out of Judaism. And so people often assume that Judaism as we know it today predates Christianity and that Christianity evolved out of it. And that really is a misnomer. I would prefer that you think about it like this, that both Christianity and Rabbinic Judaism are common descendants of a common Second Temple Judaism that existed before either one of those. And in fact, what happened was this. Early Christianity grew up as a form of Judaism. So Jesus and Paul both lived their lives and died thinking of themselves as Jews and not as anything else but Jews. But once Christianity emerged as the power player in the ancient world, Rabbinic Judaism began to develop as an alternative to it, and Christianity and Judaism really evolved alongside of each other as responses to each other. So whatever the Christians were doing, the Jews weren't. Whatever the Jews were doing, the Christians weren't. If the Jews have their Sabbath on Saturday, then by God, the Christians are going to have theirs on Sunday, and so on. So Rabbinic Judaism and Christianity are more like sibling religions than father-son or mother-daughter religions. And so those are the two things I want you to know. First of all, that Rabbinic Judaism is Judaism now, and second of all, that it evolved alongside of, not prior to, Christianity. Got it so far? All right, let's talk about some actual rabbinic concepts. So the first concept I need you to know is this. Halakha. That's a Hebrew word, and you got to say it with that sound to really get it right. Halakha. Halakha means, just like the lady over here indicates, walking. Means to go, just to walk. It also means a lot more than that. Halakha is the common Jewish word for the way to live, for law and procedure. And so when Jews today and really throughout history think about how should I live, the word for that is halakha. How should I go? And within Judaism, even of Jesus' time, even of the first century, even of the Second Temple period, Jews more or less agreed that God revealed halakha on Mount Sinai. So after the Exodus event, after Israel came up out of Egypt, Moses leads them out of Egypt. They camp at the foot of this mountain, and Moses goes up the mountain. And while Moses is on the mountain, what happens? He gets a bunch of laws. Those laws are halakha. Those laws are how you are supposed to live as a Jew. Most Jews seem to agree on this point. Here's where Jews seem to disagree. Jews disagree about what form those laws take. Now, there's lots of different interpretations, but we're going to boil it down to two. There are two groups of Jews that disagree about the real form that law takes. You got your Pharisees on one side, wrong side on one side, and you've got your Sadducees on the other. Now, the Sadducees are going to be more familiar to you because their way of thinking is more amenable to modern Christianity. The Sadducees believed that God revealed the law through writing. And so when God revealed the law, he gave Moses a written document, and Moses passed along that written document. That written document is what we now think of as the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. Sadducees believe that true divine authority only exists in written form. Written books are divine authority. That seems common today. You know, Christians and Jews alike tend to think of the Bible as divinely inspired, as law. But that was revolutionary in its time. The Sadducees were the rebels and the radicals in their time. The traditionalists of their time were the Pharisees. The Pharisees believed that law is oral, They did not care much about written law or written Torah. What they thought about law is that it is passed down from elder to young person, from father to son. And so, what the Pharisees believe is that when Moses went up to the top of Mount Sinai, what he received was not a written document, not a Bible per se, but an oral tradition that God gave to him. God told him, Moses, these are all the things you need to do. And Moses memorized all those things, and he passed them on to Joshua, and Joshua passed them on to the elders, and the elders passed them on to the prophets. And the prophets, who the prophets give it to? According to the rabbis, the prophets gave the law to the rabbis. And that's why they get to have it. Anyway, the Pharisees are the most direct precursors to early Rabbinic Judaism. They believe that law is primarily oral. But here's the wrinkle. Here's the thing that makes it more complicated. So you've got the Sadducees on one side. Let me move this over. There we go. You've got the Sadducees on one side who think of law as primarily writing, the Bible. On the other hand, you've got the Pharisees who think of law primarily as oral. So they each produce their own document that contains what they think of as law. The Sadducees insist that it's the Bible, the Tanakh, the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. That's real law. The Pharisees produce a written record of their oral tradition called the Mishnah. The Mishnah is a set of laws that Jews are supposed to live by that has almost nothing to do with the Bible. It hardly ever references the Bible. It is by and large unrelated to the Bible. This is the law of the Pharisees. The Mishnah is the law of the Pharisees. But here's the thing. After the temple is destroyed, after the Christians start coming into power, the Pharisees and the Sadducees have to start working together. Basically, the history of early Judaism is a buddy cop movie. You get two groups of people that don't like each other, they don't have a lot in common, but they have a common enemy. So what do? They find a way. And here's the way they find to work together. They develop the idea of the dual Torah. In Rabbinic Judaism, and this is the revolutionary, most important idea that Rabbinic Judaism has. Okay, stay with me on this. The most important idea that Rabbinic Judaism possesses is this idea of the dual Torah. According to Orthodox Rabbinic Judaism, when Moses went up to the top of Mount Sinai, God gave him two Torahs. God gave him a written Torah, and God gave him an oral Torah. So God handed him a set of writings and told him to copy and write down, and God told him orally in his ear a whole bunch of other things. Now, the trick for the rabbis is that these are supposed to be the same thing. They're supposed to agree with each other, but they really don't in a lot of ways. And so the primary document produced by early Rabbinic Judaism, the great textual heritage of early Rabbinic Judaism, is the book we're looking at today, the Babylonian Talmud. Babylonian Talmud is the single longest collection of writing produced in the ancient world. It is a gigantic, massive corpus of rabbinic law, folklore, etc., etc. As you're going to find out in the reading, the Babylonian Talmud takes the form of a commentary on the Mishnah. So here's the thing. The Mishnah and the Bible don't relate to each other. They don't talk to each other. The Mishnah doesn't quote the Bible. The Bible's not aware of the Mishnah, but they both have authority for rabbinic Jews. The Babylonian Talmud largely attempts to resolve that. The Talmud attempts to make reference to the Bible. The Talmud attempts to justify rabbinic lawmaking with reference to logic, other traditions, other legal rulings, folklore, etc., etc. So for today's class, you're going to read a short excerpt from the Talmud, the Oven of Achnai, one of the most famous and one of the most, in my opinion, fantastic stories in the Talmud. And it's a story about the relationship between rabbinic lawmaking and the Bible. So ask yourself this as you read. When Elijah reports on God and says that God says, "My sons have defeated me, my sons have defeated me," what's the relationship between oral Torah and written Torah in that statement? All right, have at it. I'll see you in class.